Hi, welcome to the garden today. I want to introduce you to my friend Robert.
Good afternoon, Nancy.
Good afternoon to see you. And we're taping this, so please don't write me notes saying, why couldn't I comment? I had a question. If you have a question, you can get it to me. I know for a fact Robert's going to be in a couple of other shows in the near future. I will get them to that host so that they can maybe cover your questions. And then I'm also going to give you how to reach Robert, but I'm going to do that at the end so that everybody says, oh, I missed it. It was at the beginning. And I'll put it in the notes below. So first of all, what's an Akashic record? Is it like 33 and a third, 45, what?
It's actually a quantum energy. It's a record of everything that you've done, everything that you've experienced, felt, thought since your first incarnation on Earth. The records that I'm reading are planetary oriented in the sense it's what's happened here on Gaia.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a little bit of a shift in energy in terms of the Akash over the past 10 years. And so that first incarnation, sometimes I get a peek or a glimpse at where it is that you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So, and many of the old souls watching, of course, they are star seeds. They come from someplace else and incarnated here.
Yeah, and they don't look weird when they come here and they finally get to this generation, do they, Robert? Because how old am I?
You're an old soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, if it's not linear, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and so if there was a book, let's say, for example, we were to make your records a book, it'd be one page and it would be blank, but there would be volumes of energy that spoke about your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually what you were thinking, what you were feeling as well. So.
Yeah. When I was a little kid, I got in trouble because I was in grade school and I got in an argument with my teacher, and I used to argue with teachers. I don't care if they were taller than me. And this teacher said, time is a line, and things happen in a linear order. And I said, I don't feel like that's true. I said, I feel like I'm standing in the middle of a balloon and all of time's kind of around me. And she really got angry with me, and she was threatening to send me to the principal's office. And so I said, well, I'll just sit down and shut up. But then I went home that night and told my dad, and my dad walked back over to the grade school with me, which was right across the street from where I lived. And he met with the teacher and he said, she sees things differently. But some of how she thinks time works is what Einstein thought. So leave her alone.
I think, yeah, time is circular in nature.
Mm-hmm.
If you imagined all of your life experiences, if you imagine that was the movie reel,
Mm-hmm.
or if you imagine time as being a movie reel, you actually, time being non-linear, you have the opportunity to drop down where
Mm-hmm.
you feel your incarnation, your experience is going to be has the greatest growth potential for you.
Yeah, I was a film editor when I was in film school. That's what I did the best. And it's so amazing because you can just take incidents and just where you stick them together, our brains make them contiguous. That's, unless they're really, really bizarre. So I've always kind of understood that it just depends where you stick the pieces together. That's how it works.
It's where you decide to drop down. That's right.
Because that's the only way you could, otherwise reading tarot and the other things wouldn't make sense, because how could we go backwards and see what happened to you before? Which, by the way, when I read, I'm always more secure about what people had in the past than what might be coming because of that nasty boogabeer known as free will. But anyway, how I know how I've ended up using Akashic Records, but how would a person who wasn't working in the world of woo, just a person use the Akashic Records?
Well, people decide upon a reading for a variety of reasons. You might be a businessman. You might
Mm-hmm.
have something that you're going to launch, you're going to bring to market. So you might want a little bit of assistance on that in terms of what are the potentialities.
Mm-hmm.
If I do this, if I do that, and I do that, what are the potentialities?
Mm-hmm.
And the records can help us with that. Like you said, free will. The records is a little bit it's a little bit quiet when it comes to future.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you say, every decision you make decides your future, and you have free will. So, but that would be one case where it's strictly non-woo-woo. So it's a powerful tool to help us with this human experience as we move through it. I mean, obviously, sometimes we have challenging events, we have challenging relationships, and the records helps us sort out why we decided to take this on. So.
Good. I know everyone talks about we're going through a very special time in history. Can you go, since you go hunting around the records and you're hanging out in the library looking at past stuff, how exceptional is the time frame we're in, and how did we end up here? If we had two sort of Lemuria and Atlantis before that seemed to kind of work till we got too arrogant, how does this time fit into changes? Because nobody wants to go down like Atlantis, and I was there. I don't want to do it again.
It's a very significant time. It's a very special point in human evolution, and really evolution in terms of our soul taking on, assuming greater multidimensionality. There was a time in Lemuria where we did not experience the duality that we are having now. Some point in history, maybe it was the fall of Atlantis, where we decided we need duality in order to experience growth in a more accelerated way, something on that order.
So we're coming out of a dualistic period that I was born in. Actually, some people, I've read several articles about, it started in 1950. The shifts, some of the energetic shifts started, and I was born in 49, so I was really the last baby in the dualistic world. But how do people kind of, well, I mean, other than watching the news, which we can kind of see how people are sorting this out, how do you deal with that kind of exiting the dualism? And is it like, I know for me, it's not a clear path. I keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, except now I'm kind of out of it for a bit. How do the records show that happening, or what do they sort of see?
What the records see is an evolution. So as we begin to be more complete in our divinity and our multidimensionality, things are going to begin to happen. Physically, you will no longer be a victim of your body. You'll begin to live longer. Your DNA will experience activations on multiple levels, which will assist the physical body. And so you'll be able to do what the masters did, and that is live in peace, even though everything around you is not peaceful. To experience balance, even though everything around you is unbalanced. So.
We got a master class going on in that right now. If you choose. And how much of it is just a choice you make, and how much of it is something you have to prepare for or learn for or alter your perceptions to understand? I.e., do you need to meditate? Do you need to grab the right rock? I mean,
you have free will, so it's simply a matter of deciding or making the choice to move forward. That is, in terms of experience expansion and experience your greatest self.
Good.
One of the things that the records does is that it helps us with this human experience, but it gives you a perspective. It reminds you of your magnificence, and I think that's really important. You begin to understand, the old souls understand that they've been here hundreds of times, and every lifetime tends to be a stepping stone to the next, and actually to this lifetime as well. But I think that within the physical, within the 3D, we get worn down, and I think we don't want to lose that perspective. The perspective of our magnificence. All the lives that we lived, everything that we learned, we've earned that. And within the Akash, you have the ability to go back and pick up some of those things. So, for example, you might have been a great orator in the first century back in Rome, but nowadays you're a little bit timid or afraid to speak in front of people. You can actually go into the Akash and remember those abilities.
Oh, okay. So they can bring out what would improve us.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, now I've been doing a whole series on divination tools, different things that people use to kind of understand the energy that's going on around them. And I think everybody kind of migrates to sort of one tool or another or a certain set. You and I discussed this before, but how do you feel about people when they're using divination tools? How does that help them or hurt them, or how did that have to do with them being with the Akash and getting in touch?
Well, everybody has the ability to access their Akash, and some of these tools actually provide a venue for that, whether they realize it or not. So, for example, they're using the cards or they're using other divination modalities. They might very well, as they're parsing things out, as they're looking at potentialities, they very might well be tapping into their Akash. They're tapping into the wisdom of these past lives. One of the things that you experience in the Akash is that as you look at potentialities and you have a thought, for a moment it doesn't feel like your thought, but that's your Akash. That's the old soul. That's the wisdom coming forward.
Yeah, I think I told you when I first met Robert, when he asks you, when you have a reading with him, and I'm going to get to how you do that. I looked at him and I said, I'd woken up that morning that I was going to have the first meeting with him. And what I heard in my head was, oh, you've been backdooring into the Akash for a long time. And I went, I don't remember going there. So I asked Robert, is there a way to backdoor in without learning all of the mantras and all of the things? There are ways you can prepare yourself. There's a lot of books and things about that. And you looked at me a little askance, like, what? But you agreed that there were ways that you would do that and you could see.
Listen to, some people would refer to it as the still small voice. So quiet the mind, get rid of the noise, and tap into it. One of the things that people need to know is that their Akashic records are not external to them. They're actually in our DNA. Your Akashic records is a quantum energy which is resident in the 8th layer of our DNA. Many people have heard about the ethereal layers or the light layers of our DNA. And the 8th layer is actually the residence of the Akash.
Oh, okay.
And what happens is that when we transition, when we leave the planet, that record, that energy is placed within what's called the cave of creation.
Okay.
And there is a crystal for each person where your energy and your experience is stored, and it waits there until the next time you decide to incarnate, and then you assume that again. And the notion of a crystal for each person is simply a metaphor. And the cave of creation, I believe, is non-physical. Nobody will ever find it. Nobody can ever disturb it.
It's in another dimension from us.
It's in another dimension. It's within Gaia, but within another dimension. When I've looked into it, I see kind of almost a field of energy within the earth.
Good. Someone comes to you for a reading. What do they need to know, or what do they need? How do they need to prepare, or do they just show up and?
Well, I think my recommendation would be to look back upon your life and look for the patterns. Look for the patterns of challenges. What is it that I have not been able to do? Have I been afraid to speak my truth? That type of a thing. And it may be that there is a past life trauma or maybe there's a trauma within your past. Perhaps you were a shaman and you lived a life that was, you were ostracized, or perhaps something terrible happened to you. And what happens is that when you go in and you can bring that information forward, you bring it to the conscious level, that energy begins to dissolve. And that shifts you, it shifts your consciousness. And that's kind of one of the primary things.
Okay.
So I would say, look at your life, look at the challenges, look at the repeating things. So,
what about if you have repeating good things?
that's what we should be looking at in the Akashic. Moving forward. Moving forward in our new energy, we should actually look at the good things. Wonderful things have happened to us in the Akashic. So, I mean, just being a woman giving birth, being a man watching birth, these are all beautiful things within the human experience. And we should talk about those things when we're in the Akashic.
Yeah. Because I know that Robert helped me see some things that had happened to me in the past that have made some of the path I'm going on right now a little bit easier, because I know it's supported and I know I'm not just nuts.
Well, that's one of the things, and that's kind of what you want to do. Our Akashic will push us around sometimes, and so we want to bring it to the surface, understand it, and resolve that energy.
Yeah, if you did it like how many thousands and thousands of years ago, I just think that's kind of like I got a 98 and you got a 97 kind of thing, when you were in high school. But so how long you were there or where you were there doesn't really, that to me isn't of all that much importance. But the fact that when something comes to me and it feels so comfortable and I'm running around reading and I can't find any way to explain it out of someone else's process, then I kind of go, oh, then maybe I know how to bring this into this reality from that place where I was before. I just know it like I've done it 100 times, like it's a job I'm really familiar with, or a task or an understanding. And I'm working with a lot of people right now with divination tools, and that's one of the things why I want to present all the different sort of ways people can enter into their own energy fields, and so that they can understand. And I think the Akashic Records is a perfect example of it's there, and so if you pick up a certain divination tool, whether it's I Ching or shamanism and the methodology of shamanism, and all of a sudden you go, God, this feels comfortable. It feels real. You don't try to talk yourself out of that.
That's right. And if it's really easy, you've mastered it in another lifetime. And so within the human experience, we tend to not challenge ourselves with the things that we've already mastered, but we take on the things that we haven't.
Right. And if you feel comfortable with it, then you can make it grow. And you don't have to. One of the things I found is there's certain things like I Ching. I'm going to do a show with a woman who's really good at it, because I really am not. And I really don't understand it. And I've read a big fat book on it. And I read the short pages, the Cliff Notes version of what it's about. And it just, the way I would say it, when I'm totally in my body, and intellectually doesn't make any sense to me. And I learned a long time ago that if I read something that made absolutely no sense to me, I'd file it away and say, I'm just not aware of that yet, and see what happens. Because I remember the first time someone talked to me about the Ascension in 2018, I looked at them like they'd fallen from Mars. Even though I was in the middle of it and was growing like a little weed, I didn't understand how that related to me. It took some exposure to it, but then all of a sudden it started to kind of make sense.
And a lot of the things that we're experiencing right now as a process cannot be explained in a 3D or linear sense, because these things are way beyond that. And I think there's a tendency to create order. So we create 3D boxes and we put one box inside the other. Maybe this box is adjacent to that. We know this relationship. And we overanalyze. And if you overanalyze, you actually do take away the magic. And so you do want to be careful of that.
Well, there is a lot of magic with a K involved in all this. I have a friend who used to be a spy. I mean, that was his job. He was trained in the Navy and he was an intelligence officer, but he was a spy. And he has the most innate ability to look at something and you can just see it like running through his head, and he comes out and goes, oh, it's really like this. And he's usually right, because that's how he stayed alive and kept other people alive. But he's now writing a book because he's retired from the military. He's writing a book on magic with a K. And he's gone back and looked at all these occult writings. I mean, he called me up to clarify some things in some of them. He said, you know more about this. You've been messing with it longer than I have. He's drawing some marvelous, fun conclusions, but it's going to be a horror story. So I don't know how that's going to work. But it's kind of like magic the way you don't want it to go. So there's lots of ways you can use these tools, guys.
There is, and there's just so many different arenas. And, there's so many things to learn. So.
Yeah. Robert lives in the world of form. Can I tell him what you do for a living?
Sure.
Yeah, Robert's an architect. So he lives in the world of form and he sees things in multi-dimensional layers. And actually, he was talking to me the day I came up with the eggs, which, yay, hallelujah, I finally have a designer in Wisconsin who's working with me. I think I've got a fabricator. But Robert and I have tussled between the two of us about why the egg, but we both know it needs to be an egg. But we're not altogether sure of energetically where that comes from, except to study the form of the egg and how the egg has lived in human consciousness. So you found
that, go ahead.
No, you found some sort of formula or something about the dimensions of the egg and stuff.
Oh yeah, there are, like the golden mean, there are the ratio of 5, 1.618. The egg is based on those golden ratios. So, but yeah, when when you sent me the egg, thank you very much. I kind of wondered what this was. What does this do? And at first, I thought maybe, well, it's crystals, and we know that crystals can bring forward higher dimensional energies. So I thought that maybe this was a interdimensional amplification source. But then I went into my own records and I wanted to look into this. For example, what is the energy associated with this? And how do we interact with it? And what I got from the records is this is actually what is considered to be a coherent, multidimensional energetic field. And I think that as you begin to work with it and kind of feeling the energy along with it, it feels like a toroid. And so it actually feels like this is a toroidal field. And how do we physically interact with it? I don't think we physically interact with it, but the multidimensional aspects of ourselves interact with it. And this energy field will shift multidimensional aspects of our own fields. And so, and of course, consequently, that will affect us physically.
Yes. Robert's one of the 10 people in the world that has an egg. A completed, full, done egg.
That's beautiful.
I know. They're lots of fun. And we're going to have the other chakras too. The one you're working with is for the heart chakra. And I have had it validated by one of the people who's been working with my garden a lot, that the way you get into the multidimensional and understanding and the 4 and 5D understanding of things, issues in the garden, is you have to enter through your heart. That's the energy that has to go into it.
It is. And the nature of this coherent energy field that's being generated by your elegant geometry here, part of it is the crystal, But then a second component, an important component, is actually your intention.
Yes.
So for example, we're talking about the heart chakra. So for example, if I wanted to clear an energy in my heart, I would set that intention with my egg.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy, that intention is held within this energy field.
Right.
And if I had trouble speaking, I
You
would do
get
the
the
same
throat.
thing with the throat. That's right.
And if you want to open up your third eye and have it blast out of your head, we have that one too. We got the crown chakra. We've got all of them. We will have all of them soon enough. Although for my other people who ordered heart chakras and have refused to let me send their money back, saying, we know you're going to make this. The first ones I'm making are the first 7 heart chakras that I still owe people. And then we'll have the whole shebang, the whole collection. And so Robert keeps telling me, you're going to have to write a book. I have actually written a book about the garden. I had 29 days of channeling at night visions, and I just roll over and dictate into the phone and then go back to sleep. So I now have all of the spaces in the garden defined by a vision. I walked into them, I stood there, I saw what the ground was like or where I was. And one time I ended up in a mid-century modern house that was kind of a wreck. It was kind of interesting. And the only way out was to go into the water features in the yard and get in touch with the emotions. Then you could find the path forward. The mid-century modern was the trap we got in, and we didn't know the path forward. Structures are in my garden, or if I see a structure in a space, it's always ego that's gotten in our way.
It can.
It's done. So anyway, you're right, Robert. I ended up, if Robert tells you you're writing a book, get a really good word processor program, because you're writing a book. Anyway, you have my incredible egg, and it was designed to help a friend of mine. The original one was not to open worlds up and make multidimensional. I had a friend who has a heart-lung problem, and we were trying to find a way for him to focus his energy. That's the conversation I had with Robert. The eggs were born from that. Once we started making the eggs and work with the eggs, we went, oh, this is like a whole lot different than with that just him. But he had to leave his house in a hurry. He had a flood during the Texas freeze, and his egg got lost during the move, and he was stranded living in a hotel during the time of COVID and cold weather and all kinds of crap. The first thing he did when he got home was dig through all the boxes to find out where they put, and he found his egg, and he said it was like almost instantaneous that he relaxed with the energy he'd been putting in that egg. And he said stuffing it in a box didn't hurt it. It just didn't help him get where he needed to go. And anyway, what else if someone wanted to come up and said, what other stunning, wonderful things do you think learning about your Akashic Records does? What would you say was the 1, 2, or 3 most interesting things it brings out for people?
Well, for myself, I guess it was, I was able to gain information about the challenges in my life. I had a lot of challenges in professional relationships, personal relationships, and that kind of a thing. And I got to a point where, what the heck was my soul thinking? And so, and obviously there's growth in all these experiences. There's always a win-win. And that's what we want to walk away with that. And so that was my first use of the records. And that was to explore basically why I set this situation up, why I'm in it, and what's the positive.
And okay, go, because it just went.
The icing on the cake is that you, aside from yourself, you have the opportunity to ask questions about the metaphysical or the esoteric. Much of what we're talking about is esoteric. It's not science yet. And so, so it's a wonderful resource for that. So if you're wondering, and of course, I'm an architect, I'm all about structure, so I try to know why it works. And so, but I have to temper that, and I have to be careful about that. But it will give you, you can ask general esoteric questions about why things work the way they do.
Kind of your place in the universe.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of my place in the universe. I have a need to understand that. So.
Well, it's good that there's people like you, because there's people like me. I'm just like, okay, that's what the card says. This is what it is. You're just stuck. You're never stuck. We always have free will, but. So in the world of woo, I have got to say that the Akashic Records is the one thing that I find most difficult to explain to people. I just tell them, look, it's a record somewhere. It's written about you. You are tied to it as a creature on this earth. Do animals have records in the Akashic Records?
Your pets do.
Yeah.
Because your pets, because of the love, that close relationship, you actually shift their DNA. And so you begin to build a bond. You might have a pet that's actually been a soul traveler with you. Animals in the wild do not reincarnate. Pets are different because of their association with us.
Okay. That'll make all my cat lady friends happy. So, and we come in kind of, we sort of tend to bump into the same soul pods. Is that part of the record you see or not?
Yeah, we tend to incarnate. We tend to incarnate with a lot of the same people. One of the issues is that karma is woven within your records, within your kosh. And now that's changing. We're actually, as we move into new energies, as we begin to evolve, we're going to leave karma behind. But we come down here, and we can actually, we'll be at a point soon where we can close the door on karma.
Good. I'm sure I don't even want to know half of mine. So that's part of the new energy. How long is it going to take for the new energy to decide could be a new and become the norm?
No, I get that question a lot. And it's dependent upon how do we personally shift. So in other words, the ascension is a person by person, case by case kind of situation. So as we decide to evolve, I think there is a potentiality for an accelerated track. I think as you see people within the communities you're involved with, within the metaphysical community, I see a convergence. I see a convergence of people. And so it might be thinner than we think.
I'm constantly amazed at the amount of similarities I think I feel between the different things. And somebody said, why do you want to look at all the different disciplines? I mean, you know, and I'm like, because a lot of people who are watching my channel will never pick up a card and might never use a garden or an egg or anything else, but they need to understand there's all these other ways to go at it. Numerology, I find fascinating. And I find when I go back and look, numerology is one of the things that first convinced me of real patterns in my life. And then I know my own astrologic chart just enough to be dangerous. So I can look at major shifts and say, oh, well, that's, I mean, and some of them were when I went back years when I wasn't doing astrology, and I went, oh, that was really a bad day to get married that first time. Had I only known. But well, is there any sort of little wrap-up-y thing you would like to say about how you work, how to get a hold of you? I'm going to put a link to his site below, and you know, like, so is there anything you'd like to say?
I think that most of the questions that I get are often related to relationships. My daughter, my son, my husband, and someone else. And so That is, the Akashic Records has the ability to give you an understanding of why they're in your life,
Mm-hmm.
why you signed on together. So.
Cool. Next time we talk in that realm, I will ask about my husband's.
Well, people oftentimes it'll be the second or third time around and things aren't going well.
Mm-hmm.
And the question I often get is, why in the world did I do this? You know,
Mm-hmm.
fool me once, that's your fault. Fool me twice,
Mm-hmm.
that's my fault. But we have to appreciate that when we're on the other side of the veil, there's no
Mm-hmm.
negativity. And so another soul, another being might approach you and might ask to give them another chance so
Mm-hmm.
that they can rise to the occasion, so that they can step up to the plate. And so we say, okay. And then they may or may not step up to the plate, and they may not rise to the occasion. So you end up being betrayed again. You end
Mm-hmm.
up being hurt again. So.
Yeah, I've watched over the years a situation where it was a brother and sister, and I knew someone who was following their charts, and he's a volunteer. He didn't have to be born here. He came in as a soul that was sort of complete and could have stayed on the other side forever. But his sister was someone that they'd messed around, like screwed with each other every direction of every part of the soul pod you could, and it never got resolved. So if he had not come back to resolve it with her in this lifetime, she would have had to go find another person to kind of work that energy out with. So he came across, and I found out about this when they were little kids, and I just kind of watched fascinatedly as I watched them play this out, and they did resolve it. And now he's kind of free to go do what he wants to do, because he's sort of done. And she got freed from that energy that had always held her back. And so in this life, she's just doing a whole lot better. But it's kind of fascinating when you see that, you get that kind of heads up. It also helps if you have a lot of very sensitive people in a group watching this, But it was really their whole life, they had never separated amicably. They killed each other. Just really bad stuff. And this life, they've managed to get out with just kind of, well, you're you and I'm me. And that's what we needed to do.
Yeah, and when the release is there, that's when the karmic cycle has resolved itself.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, so Robert's told us today that Akashic Records are good to know. So you kind of know where you've been. So you might have a little perspective on where you might want to go. And you've kind of informed us that maybe karma's going away. That's the most fun thing you've said all day.
It is. I mean, we come here, we build karma, and it stays with us. So we come back to resolve it. I think Ryan has said that karma was the engine of reincarnation,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going away. So,
Woohoo! I'm up for it. Although, what was it? I was told one time that my problem was I came through because I'm just fascinated with being with people. I'm in love with humanity, and that maybe I didn't have to keep coming through. I actually had someone who looked at my life this time before I came in, and she said, "You're sitting in a room with all these." She said, "Oh my God, it's the masters." And I said, "Yeah, I've heard this room before." And she said, "They're giving you the rules, but you're sitting in a throne like above them in your bright red robe and going, I'll do that. Nope, won't do that." She said, "Who are you to tell them what to do?" I said, "Because I could be there with them, but I decided to come through. I love humanity." And I said, "We just got to be a twisted little bit of myself." But I do. I find people eminent. I just find people fascinating. And I just think it's so cool to be here at this time and to see the shifts this way.
It's a special time, and people are stepping into their mastery,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to benefit other people.
Yeah.
A very common question is how can I do that? What is the core purpose at this time that I can benefit other people?
Mm-hmm.
So the norm, the status quo isn't enough.
Well, and it's just, do your best. That's the first thing I think of now every day when I wake up. I don't think about what happened the day before. I don't think about what's going to be going on in 3 weeks. The first thing I do is think of the 3 or 4 things I can do that'll be my best today and just move on from there. Because burdening yourself with thinking way too far in the future, and certainly anything you think about in the past, you can't really go change. So, now is what we got, guys. And Robert can tell you where your other nows were. What a fun day.
You're doing a really good job staying in the now.
Trying real hard. I got a whole lot. I mean, I actually, when you're talking about your DNA changing, last time I had a physical, I had switched to a doctor 2 years ago, and she finally got all my medical records together for like the last 5-10 years. And she looked at me and she said, "You're aging in reverse." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, I've seen this before where people, well, I do keto and some other things which kind of help. But she said, literally, if we'd been tracking your DNA, she said, I'm sure we would have figured out that you're aging in reverse." And I talked to some friends and they said, "Yeah, we kind of noticed that, but we didn't want to give you a big head." So she gave me a big head. So you get to hear about me aging in reverse. And I do feel better than I felt 10 years ago.
That's
And maybe
great.
even 20. So it's good times, guys. Honest, really get on the ride.
It is. We have to, we truly have to believe that we are in a new energy and cognize that. That's the first, that's the most important thing we need to do right now. And there'll actually come a day where if there's a political decision to be made, we'll say, our politicians are going to have a wonderful solution here, more wonderful than I can think of. That day will come.
Maybe the collective will push them. Maybe the angels will push them. Somebody has got to push them. It's why I got out of politics, because there was no whole lot pushing I could do. But anyway, thank you so much, Robert, for being here with us. Do you have any one last thought before we cut the Zoom off?
I used to, up here in the cities, we had a wonderful channel. And she used to channel a light collective, which she called the Light Collective. And at the end of each channel, the light beings would say, "You are more powerful than you can imagine. And if you open yourself up to your multidimensionality, that's true." So that would be my closing thought.
So Robert just told you you're a supercharged energy bunny.
That's right.
Figure out how to get in touch with that battery. Thank you so much for coming and joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye.
I know.
Okay.